yourself. And without further delay, Scott, come on up and share your story tonight, amen?
Good to be with everybody. The recovery journey gets me choked up sometimes. Woo! Good to be with you. David Cox is a good man, and he loves each and every one of you, and he's invested his life in you, and maybe he doesn't get as much recognition as he should sometimes, so let's give him a hand and all the stuff. David and I knew each other in high school. If someone would have said our paths would cross again like tonight, I couldn't have imagined that so much has happened. You know, it's been an amazing journey since 1978, 1977 to here tonight, but I'm thrilled to be with you. Hey, I know I've been introduced by David, but I want to introduce myself in a way that I'm accustomed to. Now, y'all are going to recognize it, but it helps frame my mind when I do it this way. So I want to say, hey everybody, I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ who struggles with drugs and addiction, and my name is Scott. Hi, Scott. I feel better now. Okay. David asked me earlier, he said, hey, we normally YouTube these things, and you all right with that? And I said, yeah, I am all right with that, because as my brother-in-law Rick, who's here tonight, has encouraged me, he says we own our recovery. You know, I really own it. I don't run from it. So if this is on YouTube, if that's what David thinks is best, that's good with me. I want to thank my father-in-law, Dick McCotter. He's here, and he really supports and loves this ministry. He's been through a lot because of me. Thank you, Dick. And my nephew, James, is here. Thank you for being here, and maybe it was clear if not, but my brother-in-law, Rick, who's loved me and my wife and entire family through my whole addiction and recovery process. I love you and all the family, and I thank you for being here. Let's rewind the tape a little bit, all the way back to the early 60s. I was born here in Titusville. My dad launched rockets out of the Cape, like so many dads in that time. Titusville is a great place to grow up. And I really don't have any trauma in my background. And of course in recovery often that's the case. And I just have great empathy and respect for people who come out of really rough situations in their home life or something like that, trauma they've been through. I'm one of those people that managed to screw up my life all on my own. You know, I didn't have any trauma. Now, I do have an addictive nature. I didn't realize that growing up, but looking back on it, it's pretty clear. I went to Parkway Junior High School, and I don't think my mom ever understood why I went to school a little early, but I'd go behind the Publix back there. And by the way, if I mention my own journey with drugs and alcohol, I do not do so to glamorize it in any way, but it's my own little story, and I think I need to share some of this with you to understand it. But anyway, more often than not, you know, I go behind Publix High School, a little place called The Wall back there, and I get high, you know, before I went to 7th grade and 8th grade, some in 9th grade too. And I have vivid memories of going into some of the local little zippy marts and with some of my little troublemaking friends, and one would distract the clerk and one of us would go over there and shove some empty, you know, 20/20 down our pants, and hopefully it didn't fall out, you know, so we can go out in the woods. That kind of classic, you know, teen stuff. But looking back on it, you know, if one was good, two's better of anything, you know, just as pretty much whatever I could get to alter my mind. And I didn't have a bad childhood. So that should have been a signal, but I certainly wasn't aware of it. You know, I couldn't grasp that I had an addictive nature. Fortunately, I made a decision to go in the Marine Corps Reserve when I was 18. And they had a drug testing policy over the Orlando Reserve Unit with pot and everything. So I had to stop that, and that was a good thing. And then a little bit later, a couple years later, I married the most beautiful girl. And And she's an amazing woman. She was then and she is now today. A very strong woman, and moral character and everything. And so I actually stopped drinking essentially, and didn't do any of that in my 20s and 30s. But that addictive nature was in me, and it just kind of went dormant, but it was still there. Somewhere, I think around age 45, I think I had a genuine issue with some ADD issues. I still do today. And I got a prescription for Adderall when I was about 45 years old. And I think it helped me. And if it's not abused, I'll let the doctors figure out with their own patients whether it's a good thing or not. I mean, there's a lot of debate about that. But anyway, I went on it. And over time, 50 milligrams is good, 60 is better, 60 is good, 70 is better. And pretty soon I was pretty much maxed out on it. And during this time, I have been very fortunate. I had built a business, and I had actually a couple of automobile dealerships, and things were going pretty well. And I'm just going to tell you my story. But I ended up being asked to run for Congress. I said yes. That actually happened in 2010. I won election to go up to Washington and serve in the House of Representatives, and what an honor that was. And it was a very tumultuous time in our country. Of course, it's gotten even worse now, but far worse. But it was a pretty rough time in our country. But I went up there. I wasn't abusing any of my medications or anything. I was just, working hard. And I got so busy that my wife stopped coming up there to spend time with me. So I was pretty much up there by myself, and I worked a lot. Whether we got anything done or not, that's a whole other question. Set that aside. But I was working a ton, like till 9 o'clock at night. And then because of my ADD, I guess, one time I was going to be going up to Washington, and I forgot my prescription. So I had all of my Adderall in Virginia Beach. And I was in Washington, D.C., and I was scared to death because once you get on that stuff, you get on a stimulant, an amphetamine, you think you need it. And pretty much you do until you wind yourself off of it. So I knew I was going to crash or something. So I went and saw what's referred to as the house physician. And they have good medical care up there. And I walked in the doctor's office. I said, "Hey, doc, I forgot my Adderall prescription, and can you help me?" And he said, "No problem." And I thought he was going to give me like 3 or something to, get me through the weekend, and then I'd go back home and pick up, because I had like 27 or something. I still remember the number back in Virginia Beach. And he wrote me a script for 30. And that little addictive nature guy that lived in my head all those years lit up and said, hey, if you can get this thing filled, you got 27 back home, you got 30 in the bottle. And that's where it started. That's where it started for me. Innocently enough, if you will, but still, I'm not blaming it on anybody, not the house physician or anything, it was just me. So I went out and I made it a point to fill that thing in Washington, D.C., because I thought, well, hopefully they won't talk with the pharmacies in Virginia, and they didn't at the time. That's now changed for the better, and I'm glad. Because guys like us who deal with prescription abuse, that helps. So I got that thing filled, and so I knew, well, again, I don't want to glorify this stuff because frankly it took me down. It blew up my family and messed me up, and a lot of horrific things have happened in my life with my marriage and everything else in my family. But in my mind, 70 is good, 140 a day is even better. What weird logic, addicts have. So I started going down that route, and well, you start doing that and you get jittery. You take 140 milligrams of amphetamines a day, whether it's Vyvanse or Adderall or something like that, you get all wrapped around the axle. And sure enough, that happened to me, and I tried to compensate for it. I'd get home, I'd be all, ramped up, and then I couldn't sleep, right? So what do I need? I should have stopped taking this stuff, but no, what I need is sleeping medication. So I went on that, and then I had anxiety, so they prescribed some benzodiazepines. And that's about the last I'm going to say about all those drugs, but each and every one of them is addictive. And I used more and more. And I didn't realize what was happening to me. My wife was concerned, but she didn't understand it because I hid it pretty well. You know, the whole thing. She never knew, of course, that I was double prescribing. And then we'd come down here and see our family because I grew up in Titusville. And what did I do? I found a doctor. I just went up to New Smyrna Beach and I found another doctor that would prescribe me down here. That's addictive nature, off the charts, at least for us prescription types. So everything culminated, and it got to where I couldn't serve in Congress anymore. I served 6 years, and I was getting rattled, and I knew I had to get out. People were wondering what's wrong with them. Of course, nobody knew that I was abusing drugs and alcohol. I'd come home from work, and I'd start drinking for effect, and I was combining all of these things. And then I thought, well, okay, I'll get out of Congress, and then things will be better. Nothing got better. I kept using all of that because I thought I needed it. I thought it helped me. I thought it made me more productive. And again, weird addict logic. So 2017, I was supposed to be better physically, emotionally, spiritually. And my wife was wondering, why are you laying around all the time? And what's wrong with you? You're moody. And I never know if we can go anywhere because I don't know what kind of mood you're going to be in. And I was just all captured in this darkness, and it got worse and worse. And then, well, maybe 2018 will get better. Well, no, 2018 didn't get better. What did the addict do in me? The addict in me said, you know what I think I need to do? I think I need to add something natural to this mix. I think I'll add pot. So, found somebody where they were working on my motorcycle. I talked them into selling me some out back, and so I added that to the mix. So now I've got every pretty much all that mess is going into me on a daily basis. Nobody really knows. End up in Virginia Beach, and let me bring up this date that if I ever get a tattoo, I don't have one, but if I do, it's going to be 11/18. 11/18 is November the 18th of 2018. I was despondent. I was depressed. I had started to do things that I think would qualify clinically as suicidal. I loved riding my Harley, and if I could get in a state without a helmet wall, I'd ride without a helmet, and then I'd get all jacked up on this stuff, and I'd ride like 100 miles. I remember riding at 2 or 3 a.m., riding from Virginia down to Florida, at like 100 miles an hour, and thinking, if I go down, well, at least I won't remember it, I'm not going to wake up from this. And looking back on it, it was suicidal. It's sad, really, but it all came to the extreme when my wife was basically frightened of me and what I was doing and what I was doing with my life and the music that I was listening to. And so she actually moved out of the house, moved in with our daughter, and that made things even worse for me. And I overdosed on these benzodiazepines, which put me into a state of blackout. I didn't know what blacked out meant. I knew what passed out meant. Passed out is, well, you're harmless, pretty much. You might embarrass yourself, might puke on yourself or something like that, but you're laying on the couch. I didn't know what blacked out is. Blacked out, some of you may know, but you're operating, you're functioning, you're speaking, you're moving, you're awake. You don't remember any of it. I didn't. I had no clue. I ended up in a psychiatric hospital in Virginia Beach going, what happened? I have just a wisp of a memory of being tackled in my garage by my best friend. My best friend was there, my son was there, and my son-in-law was there, and another friend was there, and they tell me about this, I don't remember it. But November the 18th of 2018, I woke up in the Virginia Beach Psychiatric Unit. Actually, that's when I was put in. It was the 19th, that's my clean date. That's my first, thanks be to God, clean and sober since November the 19th of 2018. Y'all can clap for that. Free of alcohol and drugs completely from that day, and thanks be to God. And I celebrate each of your clean dates with you, and we all need each other in that. And that's why I'm here. This is step 12 for me, so thanks for letting me share, So, November the 18th, went in. I was, if you ever put a bumblebee in a big jar and watch that thing go, around, it's mad. I was a mad dude. on the 19th. I was there, I've been brought there by the police, and I was under order, or whatever they call it. I couldn't leave. Now, I had enough sense to know that if I busted through the door, I could be in real trouble. So, but I was mad as a hornet. Everybody's got a problem but me. You know, what's step one? Come out of denial. I was in complete and total denial. How does everybody in my family think I have a problem? And I don't. I started going to groups. I remember the first group, you know, where you sit in a circle and, you know, go around and say your name, and guys are saying, I'm an addict, or I'm an alcoholic, or I'm both, and women too, and we're getting around to me. I think, what am I going to say? Because I'm not an addict or an alcoholic. I really thought that. Now, what am I going to say? So it got around to me, and I thought, well, I don't want to call attention to myself. So I said, I'm an addict, and sure enough, I am. But it was about a week, and that's one of the benefits of these groups. It was about a week into this group where I started, the scales started to come off my eyes. And I remember a woman telling the story. She's an alcoholic, and she started talking about how she would hide her bottles of vodka in the toilet thing, where the water is, so her husband wouldn't find it. And then I remember thinking how I would hide my bottles from my wife, of one prescription, dump it into the other, and be sure I couldn't just leave one out, because she'd realize I was getting filled in Washington and Virginia Beach and everything. So I thought, wait a minute, that's addictive behavior. I'm an addict. I do that. And that epiphany hit. And I didn't know what the next steps were, but I thought, I guess I got a problem. The family wanted me to come down to Florida to a treatment center for 30 days. Even then, I was very reluctant. I said, I'll give you no more than 30. I was mad as a hornet still resented them. But I went down to South Florida, went into treatment. I actually busted out of there once. It's not a good story, but I busted right through the door, tried to escape. I was recaptured. That's a sad, it's kind of funny now, but back then it was sad. Actually, the police took me back to that place, because anyway, nobody in my family wouldn't come and pick me up, which was a good thing. I didn't realize it at the time. But I finally said, I'm going to work on this, and I voluntarily stayed in there for 101 days. And I said, you know what, God, this is not a chapter in my life I would have written. I wouldn't. But this is a chapter that I'm experiencing. And I'm separated from my wife. We've been married now 40 years. She actually had to file for divorce papers while I was in treatment because I frightened her so much. And she also had done bizarre things with our finances to put us at risk. And I learned about that when I went to get somebody from the treatment center took me down to get $100 out of the cash flow machine. And the guy says, hey, there's no money in there. I walked in the bank and said, what's the problem? I know I got $100 in there. And they said, no, your whole account's been locked down. And that's when I learned that my wife had to file for divorce, which I understood. She never pressed the button on total, we're married today, thanks be to God. But during that process, she had to exercise that tough love toward me, and I'm glad. So if you have a family member who's giving you a hard time, in that sense of being strong and firm with you, ultimately I think it's for your best. It certainly was for me. But I want to leave you with a couple of things. One of the things is that she said at the end of every email, I wasn't able to call her or talk to her, she didn't want that, but she would say, it was Matthew 19:26. She'd always end her emails with God, all things are possible. And it was hard for me to even envision what that meant, because this was a terrible situation I was in. I was depressed, I was, just alone down there, but I was getting good care. But she would always end her emails with that verse, with God, all things are possible. And slowly, the more that I began to accept that I needed to change and that God needed to be at the center of my life again, as he was in a previous time. I needed to rediscover the joy of being close to God and to putting my life over to him and figure out why did I have all this need to medicate myself and to get these feelings inside of me. I started going to Celebrate Recovery down in North Palm Beach. I think that's where I was, someplace down. Yeah. And that's where God really began to move through meetings just like this, when I was by myself, and being able to feel God moving in my life, and people praying for me constantly. And I think just a great humbling. I began to repeat the full version of the Serenity Prayer every day, and I still say it multiple times a day. And I'd like to share it with you now just because it'll be a blessing with me to share it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen. That sums up where I'm at right now. Thanks be to God, I'm restored with Terry. There are still things we're working through. Still relationships in my own family that healing takes a long time. But things, as David said earlier, I said, David, what should I share with these good folks? And he said, hey, just where you've been, what you went through, and where you're going. Well, where I'm going is a good place. It's good. It's drug and alcohol free, and I can appreciate the sunshine and just the simple things in life, breath in my lungs, and people who love me, the opportunity to get back through step 12. And that's what I've tried to do with you guys here tonight. Thanks for letting me share.
All right, that's some good stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
How God can take a mess and turn around and give us a message, amen? I was telling somebody today that, we'll never understand our pain until it's become somebody else's gain. What Scott went through, what I went through, and most of us, we didn't really know what happened, and how God takes that mess and gives us a message, and sometime in our life we'll run across people, and you'll go, man, I've been there, I've done that, I can identify, let me walk with you and let me help you. And our pain becomes their gain. Then it almost starts making sense, amen? Amen. So appreciate you, Scott, and what you're doing, and we adopt you tonight as one of us and our family. So we give you the key to the city here, and we give you a man cave to hang out with us, watch Florida Gator football, Liberty House, and if we're ready to come stay with us. Okay, next week, I won't be here, but Brother Jaime will be back bringing the message, and y'all remember Brother Jaime from Nicaragua. And then when I get back after that, we'll rejoin our 12-step series, step number 4, and about taking the spiritual inventory. Amen? Amen. All right, God bless you. We'll see you.